Welcome to the Fold Mysteries, where we seek to discover everything that lies between the folds of reality. So, our second week back after a couple week hiatus. So, I'm expecting, our awesome chat to get in and start getting involved again. I know it's a little weird once coming back from a short hiatus, having our usual viewers come on. So hopefully we'll start seeing them. I love the chat when it gets active. So
Oh yeah,
I look forward to that.
yeah.
Let's start with you, Abe. What's new in your world? Hold on. Let me see.
Oh well, yeah. So apologies to everybody last weekend, or not last weekend, but last week for the somebody must have forgot on their end. I still have not heard from him, but I hope he's doing well. Other than that, that weekend we took a guy out from a news station in northern Minnesota. And we went to an area, a couple different areas. We went to where the Minnesota Iceman was shot. I was standing at the
Yes.
location where the Minnesota Iceman, which I got goosebumps, where the
That's
Minnesota
amazing.
Iceman was shot. And of course, all of this, my team member and also speaker at this year's NBC, Joel Sturgis, knows this location. He's hunted this location for many, many years. The real cool thing is, oh my gosh, we stayed in the exact same campground, camping spot in the campground where he had his sighting at many, many years ago. And he was having a little PTSD going on and stuff like that. And don't worry, I mean, you put your tent closer to mine, it'll make you feel better. That type of stuff. I
Oh, that's
even,
awful.
I even try to give him a little bit of mace just in case you need some pepper spray there. So that was really, really cool. Um, Especially, and we recorded everything in 4K. I just got back home today because I had work up north as well. So I just literally got back home this morning, unpacked the vehicle, work equipment, got it repacked for this coming weekend. So just to elaborate more, so we were studying still where the Minnesota Iceman was, seeing that spot where Hansen, seeing the creature charge him and he shot at it, where the other two were eating the deer and they ran off and up the hill and stuff like that. And then we went around in this area. It was just really, really squatchy all the way around in the Superior National Forest in northern Minnesota. We stopped by at a lake festival in the White Lakes at a taco stand because we all were kind of hungry and stuff like that. But however, after that, I had some really, really good friends that had habituation stuff going on in their property, where her daughter has seen it a few times. Her sons, I should say, has seen the creature a couple of times. Where I personally and another team member heard bipedal walking, where eyeshine, was seen as well. And so I arranged it with one of her sons, who I've actually got to watch grow up. He took us back towards this river, and in doing so, it was the news guy, Matt Rasmussen, Joel, and myself, and the kid, the son. And we go back there, and I get my call blaster on. And you might be able to hear this coming October, but this thing is freaking deafening when you're holding it. And we broadcast the Ohio Hall. And for
Nice.
those who don't know what the Ohio Hall is, that's where you see Bobo, I guess you could say, I'm finding Bigfoot like, that's the Ohio Hall. And so I got goosebumps again. And I broadcasted that, shut that off, and about 5 seconds later, the news guy heard something mimicking what sounded like the Ohio Hall coming back in response to the broadcast.
Interesting.
So I couldn't hear it because my ears were still ringing. Joel didn't hear it because he was really close to me. The kid who took us out, he heard something in a different direction from where Matt Rasmussen possibly had heard his possible vocalization. So that was really cool, to have that happen. Other than that, just crunch. We had to change the date of the kids' Bigfoot camp out
Hmm.
to the weekend before, which would now it'd be August 14th, 15th, and 16th. The
Yes.
same day that somebody's having one heck of a conference, from what I hear.
Oh my God. Speaking of that, so I'm so excited because
Yes.
all the little T's are getting crossed and all the little I's are getting dotted and everything's come together really well. We just got our T-shirts in, the full mystery shirts, replenishment of those. Plus, we got our Irons Michigan Bigfoot Conference shirts as well. We have all the little stuff that we needed together, and it's really come together really nice. And as everybody knows, this is the second annual The Full Mysteries Irons Michigan Bigfoot Conference, which is going to be held on August 15th and 16th. If you can, scan that QR code to get your tickets. There's vendor spots still available. There's still tickets available, but they are flying off the shelf because, it's a very remote town that people are coming in for this event for. And the ability to go out and actually search for Sasquatch after the event is a real possibility, because not only is there multiple stories about Bigfoot in the area, but there's also multiple stories about Dogman as well. Because as everybody knows, Dogman is Michigan is kind of Dogman Central, which I know is still a taboo subject. But if you go out, researching for Bigfoot while you're out there for the conference, there is a possibility that you could have a Dogman experience as well. So it's kind of exciting. Either way, it's going to be an amazing, exciting event. It's very family oriented. There's going to be the kids corner where we're going to allow kids to kind of get the ability to see what it's like to cast their own Bigfoot print using their own foot. So they'll get to cast their own footprint. So that's kind of exciting. And we'll also have the Bigfoot reporting booth. So if you have a sighting in the area, you can report it there and have the opportunity for us to actually go out and research that. Obviously leave us your name, your contact, the area that you saw it in, a little bit of detail about it, and give us the opportunity to research that. So they're going to have amazing speakers. Jay Bachochin is somebody that I'm really excited to meet in person. He's going to be there speaking. So just a lot of great people. A lot of great people has come together for this. So I'm excited. I'm ready for it to happen.
Right on. Hey, I'm glad that you had all these people coming in and helping you and doing, because for one person, trust me when I say for one person, it's a lot on your shoulders. And you felt some of that already. So that's awesome. I'm excited for you.
I'm excited too. Speaking of excitement, I am so stoked, kind of sort of fangirling out for our guest tonight. So our guest that is appearing tonight is somebody that I've always kind of held in high regard. He keeps his mind open. He researches many different aspects when it comes to Bigfoot research. So welcome to the Full Mysteries, Todd Neiss. I feel like, hold on. I got so many. Okay, here we go.
Good to see you guys.
Hey, bro. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Welcome to the Full Mysteries.
It's been a while.
Just a quick introduction of you, Todd. So your latest research involves bridging the gap between the scientific community versus the paranormal community by finding scientific explanations for reported anomalies associated with Bigfoot species. You do consider yourself amongst the scientific biological camp. So engaging the woo is like stepping into a third rail of Bigfoot research. This line of inquiry was the result of a trip that you made to the Omaha Reservation in 2021. Over the course of a week, you were forced to re-examine certain Bigfoot behaviors and anomalies that you had initially written off as paranormal or supernatural and inconsistent with your typical conservative research. This includes multiple repeat encounters, habituation, established relationships with modern humans, to include rudimentary communication and eye shine, all of which you had dismissed as highly unlikely if not completely impossible.
That
So
is
this
correct.
visit was an eye-opening experience for Todd. Following your initial 1993 encounter, it took you 28 years to physically or visually witness them in person and only raised more questions than answered. So upon your return home, you were able to solve the eye shine effect, which became the catalyst for you to go down the rabbit hole in search of scientific explanations for other alleged anomalies like appearing and disappearing, being zapped, blurry photos, orbs, mind speak, etc. Other topics that you typically look into are the origins, behavior, the human Bigfoot relations, official recognition, the IUCN and the ARRO, conservation and protection. So I'm very curious. So what is the IUCN and the ARRO?
Well, that's a good question. The IUCN's been around for many years. It's the International Union for Conservation of Nature. It's based out of Stockholm, Sweden. And these are the folks that literally get to determine the health of virtually every species on the planet. You know, we typically think about, okay, they're healthy or they're extinct or somewhere in between, they're threatened or endangered. But there's actually 9 different statuses, if you will, on what they call the red list. And so I got into, trying to figure out how animals gain recognition, because when we look at ultimately getting protections for them vis-a-vis my American Primate Conservancy, you have to look at how they are recognized and what it takes for them to be officially recognized. That step is necessary prior to gaining any sort of protected status. And so, interestingly enough, in those 9 different statuses or levels, if you will, of species recognition, 2 of them would apply to our subject, the Bigfoot species, one of which is just defined as data insufficient, for instance, which our species fits into that category. In other words, there is information out there that suggests that this species does exist, but it is not sufficient enough for it to necessarily be officially recognized. Interestingly, the IUCN was, this goes back probably about a dozen years, but believe it or not, normally when a species is recognized, you have to have what they call a type specimen. A specimen has to be captured, brought in, dead or alive, ideally a male and female, to study the dimorphism between them. But about 12 years ago, I want to say, and I could be plus or minus a few years, but it was the first time ever the IUCN actually accepted the existence of a new species based solely on a photograph, a very clear photograph, actually several photographs, but that had never been done before without actually bringing in a physical type specimen. So that was kind of exciting. So I've been using that format, if you will, to try to through the Conservancy to try to get them established through the IUCN, I should say. Another interesting place I looked has been overlooked by a lot of people, really, and that's the 1972 Endangered Species Act, which is based obviously here in the United States. And there are a couple passages. If you're bored enough to read through the voluminous act itself, you'll find that there are a couple of statements made by the Department of the Interior, who controls Fish and Game and the Forest Service and many other different organizations, but they would be the ones, the Department of the Interior, to make that recommendation. But there are a couple passages actually in the 1972 Endangered Species Act that open the door for the possibility of getting protections for an animal without, without having to have a type specimen. The ARRO is the All Domain. You guys have heard of this. The All Domain. I've got to get this right. The All Domain. It's under the Department of Defense, actually. The All Domain Anomaly. Look it up. This is ARRO, the All Domain
Anomaly Resolution Office.
Resolution Office. Thank you. And that's just recently been put together under the Department of Defense. And this is where, when we've seen the U.S. government come forward with what we commonly call UFOs, they call UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. Well, I have an issue with that organization and would love to bring it to their attention, and I plan to in a subtle way, I suppose, but a straightforward way. All Domain is the key to that whole organization, and it has to be, by definition, that they have to resolve anomalies in that department, both on land, terrestrial, as well as the air, the extraterrestrial, and for that matter, even subaquatic. So I plan to address that with the AARO to see if we can't get a particular division opened up for, let's call it, unidentified terrestrial phenomena.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, like it's in their name, All Domain. So why are we looking up in the sky when there are things right here on planet Earth that are being completely ignored? So
right.
So there's the Reader's Digest version anyway of what those two organizations are, and I just threw in the Endangered Species Act for fun.
Yeah, I mean, you bring about a valid point with the whole recognition of species, because even to bring a species out of extinction, which is a known species, you have to have at least a breeding pair of specimens, correct?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, here's the people tend to believe that the definition of extinction is when the last of a species dies, and God knows we've actually witnessed that over the course of several hundred years. The passenger pigeon, for instance, we literally watched in the Cincinnati Zoo in 1937, Martha, the last passenger pigeon known to exist, go into extinction. We know the date, we know the time, we know the place when an entire species vanished off the planet, and we watched it. And to me, that's very upsetting. They tried trying to do some hybridization with some other kinds of pigeons. It just never worked, and hybridizations rarely do. But anyway, I don't want this species to go the way of the dodo bird or so many other animals that we've literally have photographs of, and they're gone. They're gone. Right. So, but getting back to the definition of extinction, it doesn't have to be the last of a species. In fact, technical extinction can come into play when there are just several hundred of any species.
Yeah.
And that's because the breeding population becomes so small that there is inbreeding involved, which creates mutations and deformities. It affects the immune system, and literally, if there's a species out there where there may be 300 of them, let's just say, a spotted frog, whatever, that species is pretty much doomed to extinction long before the last one dies. So, and the fact that we don't know the population without any certainty of the Bigfoot species, we don't know the health of the species. We don't have all the information needed as far as habitat and resources. We've got clues here and there, but until it's taken seriously by science, we could literally, just out of stubbornness or pride watch a species, a very important species in my book, go the way of the dodo bird. And I personally don't want that to happen, which is why I founded the American Primate Conservancy in 2015, is to try to get some legitimacy in that quest.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting, and I think it's great that you mentioned the recognition of a new species has come down to you said photographic proof basically, and that's been recent. So how long ago was that?
Like I say, it was probably a dozen years ago. It appeared in the journal Nature, scientific journal. And now, in all fairness, full disclosure, this was an insect, a bee species that had never been scientifically accepted or recognized. And like our species, a Bigfoot, there was plenty of evidence, plenty of eyewitnesses that had seen them and tried to get photographs of them. And it wasn't until this one particular individual, but his name escapes me, was able to use a very professional camera and located one and got some extremely clear photos from various different angles that it made the list. So it is possible. I mean, all I'm saying is, yeah, okay, there's an insect. It could be a fish. It could be a frog. Whatever. But a precedent has been set that should we have clear enough photographs, and I imagine a series of photographs of this species or any other species, it may qualify just on that basis alone, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah, that is. But I think the question that other people might ask is, will AI play a factor in this ability of proof of taking a picture of a new insect impact the ability to accept it without a specimen?
Well, you bring up a good point, Gwendolyn. The thing is, this came up going back to Photoshop days and any sort of photo enhancing from Hollywood, that the era in which it's filmed and the technology available at that time becomes very important, and which is why the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film kind of stands alone. This was actually done on a 16 millimeter film, on literally celluloid film that could not be manipulated. And although there's been numerous attempts, even in the currently going on, of digitizing and trying to enhance that, Mr. Todd Gatewood has been doing some amazing stuff, taking this 16 millimeter film to the level of almost 8K in terms of definition. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you can literally see the individual pebbles in Bluff Creek. He's doing some amazing stuff. He's a professional film restorer, has worked with Hollywood for years, and it should be coming out. He's been kind of dropping stills here and there, but even the stills are just absolutely phenomenal. So I can't wait to see the video reproduced in using the technology that he has.
That's awesome.
But you make a good point. And Photoshop, a good, and including AI, a good, a very good professional in that field still will be able to tell whether something has been done through AI. But it's going to get harder and harder, and the technology is going to get better and better. In fact, I'm not even here right now. You're not kidding.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, with the digital aid, I mean, a lot of things are going digital. So the ability to manipulate digital images is easier when you don't have the proof of film. So
it's crazy, yeah. And that's why I think it's really going to getting photographic evidence is getting harder and harder to pass that muster, that level of clearness on and proof. we're probably still looking at getting physical evidence in the form of DNA.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's irrefutable and impossible to fake.
Well,
Oh.
if I may interject right here, I think from what we know, at least from the Patterson Gimlin film on her gait and her walk, AI will always portray more of a human gait and walk versus what we know of a Bigfoot gait and walk. So that right there could just, I mean, like you said, if somebody who's experienced with that kind of an eye should be able to tell just by the gait and the walk and how the locomotion is.
Yeah, there are some tells that a professional can latch onto, but I'm with Glenn. I'm just like, you know, what's going to be like in 5 or 10 years? It's just, I mean, voices can be duplicated, images can be duplicated, and as you know, you can make anybody you want say anything you want and do anything you want. It's kind of scary, but
This is true.
yeah. So I think we're going to have to probably lean a little more heavily on physical evidence to bring this one home.
You know, I totally agree with you, and that's just going to be the bottom line. And it's been the bottom line forever, as far as I'm concerned. Is that's what science wants. It's something where they can get their hands on, and unfortunately dissect, or even get close enough to study. Hopefully, we can see something like that happen, like how Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey did with the gorillas and the chimpanzees, where they got comfortable with her. You know, and so there won't have to be a body harvested, so to speak, and where it could be done in a more humane way. And there's just so much more I think could be understood about these beings or creatures or whatever have you if it was done like that on a consistent level where trust came into play instead of them running and hiding.
What bothers me is really the reputation that the Bigfoot has suffered at the hands of not only hoaxers but fakes and whatnot, and starting from the very beginning, given that horrible name, it just lends itself to suspicion and criticism in this field. Constructive criticism in this field is necessary, as in any field, especially when you're dealing with something so serious as this. But there's a big difference between criticism and cynicism, and which is not constructive, and it's just flat out based on, and we see it all the time. Bigfoot doesn't exist because I say so. You know, with that, I mean, it's the easiest argument in the world to make. You don't have to prove anything.
Yeah.
You just got to say it, and I guess that's what it is. But so yeah, it's a big challenge to get where I'm hoping we can get. But I think, just like in any courtroom, for instance, testimony is considered legitimate, and we're talking, as you know, going back just the 300 or so years we've been here, speaking about Western Europeans have been here in the United States and North America, not to mention millennia with Native Americans. The accounts are so consistent, and they're just not given any weight. To me, the question really isn't how can Bigfoot exist. I think the real question that should be asked is how can 20,000 people all be wrong, and nobody can answer that. And if we got 20,000, let's just say just a round number, 20,000 eyewitness accounts from people from all walks of life. These aren't, people that are hallucinating or on drugs or some of them probably, but these are very sane, sober people. Like in the case of my encounter in 1993, where I and 3 other soldiers were eyewitness to 3 of these beings, and I guarantee you, playing with explosives like we were back then, He definitely had to be pretty sober to do that. So, but so which brings me back to the Native American angle, and one of the things that I've also been working on in that regard. I have a lot of respect for Native Americans, and it's very difficult, as you know, to break through that barrier that's that stigma that's been out there for a long time. But when you do, it's a treasure trove of information, which is one of the reasons I went back to the Omaha reservation in 2021. But whereas some people have actually approached the Department of the Interior here in the United States, as well as I know of an individual who's approached the Canadian variant of the Department of the Interior. They get the door slammed in their face. They don't even get an audience. They don't even get a 5-minute, let me hear your spiel. So I've thought that maybe one of kind of a back door to this, if you will, is to work with Native Americans. My plan is that to work with them to draft laws, which are, they have their own autonomy on their reservations. They make their own rules with regards to their laws and their, fish and game regulations and whatnot. And they have their own judicial system. And so my thing is to try to work with different tribes, and I've actually approached 5 different tribes on this, from Alaska to Nebraska, and I've been working with them to put together a draft, which they have every right to do, to enact laws, regulations, at least in so much as what can or cannot be done on their territory, on their land. They are independent nations after all. And, through my efforts and going through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, if we can get enough tribes to get on board, and it's a win-win for them anyway, because, it's part of their culture. To the extent that it's almost they're almost spiritual in nature, and they've always been a part of their traditions and ceremonies. So it lends credence to their culture and their history, as well as just reinforces the fact that if they want to put protections on them, even though the United States proper, the continental United States proper, is not willing to, they can do it, and there's nothing nobody can do about it. So if we get the ball rolling and say we get a couple dozen tribes on board to enact these laws, then we walk in the door through the Department of the Interior, or better yet, now through the Office of Aero, and say, slam it down on the desk. Here's 2 dozen tribes. They've got you surrounded. We've got numerous tribes around the United States. They're all saying this. If it does nothing else, it at least kind of takes the sting out of the cynicism and really in terms of the government's concern, and probably why they have not gotten involved, which kind of supposedly held them back getting involved with the UFO crowd, is the spending of taxpayers' money. It's all about politics when it really comes down to it. So by them opening the Pandora's box and letting that genie out of the bottle with the UAPs, and really the amazing support they've gotten from taxpayers, right? About the whole thing. Everybody's like, yeah, you can spend my tax money studying Martians, or whatever you want to call it. And so it kind of opens the door a little bit for them to say, okay, now that we've got that offer, check that block, we're also going to have an office that studies unidentified terrestrial phenomena. and wait for the shoe to drop. But you know what? They've set a precedence that they've admitted to spending taxpayers' money on the UFP, UFO, whatever you want to call it, for decades, really. So with that precedent, I don't see any reason between that and perhaps getting Native Americans behind the project, and Aero, like I said, it's Aero opening up all domain, right? That maybe we can get more attention to this subject, because again, my bottom line, my greatest concern and my goal before I kick the bucket is I would feel horrible leaving this world knowing that I didn't at least try to do something to get this species protected. I want my grandkids, my great grandkids, to be able to have at least the same opportunity that I had, and I would just be I would be very upset to find out that we dropped the ball on yet another species.
Right. I mean, speaking of that, I mean, not to jump down the conspiracy route, but do you think there are any downsides to the government with any admittance to the existence of Bigfoot, like that could affect logging, national preservations, and things like that?
Oh, those excuses have been out there a long time, and frankly, I do believe, I'm not a conspiratorialist, but I can't help but believe that the government, at least in the form of the scientific community writ large, is and has been fully aware that this species is out there. And again, people say, well, then why are they keeping it quiet? And that's when you start, oh, well, it's going to affect logging. It's going to shut down access to certain areas. It's going to upset the religious community because of the evolutionary connection that may or may not exist. There's, I don't buy into that. Again, I go back to, I think their biggest hesitation in not getting involved is political. Again, the having to account for using taxpayer money to look for Bigfoot. You know what I mean? So, but again, we go back to this. They opened this new office, and interestingly, it's under the Department of Defense, not the Department of Agriculture, the Department of the Interior, or Fish and Wildlife. No, it's DOD, but I guess it's DOW now, right?
Right.
But anyway, so I mean, there's some incremental things going on that as technology advances, you both know. I mean, I've been doing this for going on 34 years, and the technology that we started out with and what we have now, and the affordability of that technology, I can only imagine what it's going to be. These flares and night vision stuff and all that. I've got camera systems that would make you laugh compared to what we've got today. And so I think as technology trickles down to us citizens, and becomes more affordable, I think we're getting closer and closer to solving this enigma. And I think as more and more evidence comes forward, at least legitimately, we're getting with the whole AI thing, we're getting a whole lot of static out there, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But I think the chances of us having some legitimate evidence that's going to get the attention of the government it's coming. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. It really is.
Yeah. I think when the government really dove into research of UAPs, I think they were kind of taken as a joke, and maybe even that's their delay of wanting to recognize Sasquatch, even though they probably have numerous reports from very trusted individuals about both topics, UAPs and Sasquatch. And maybe they're just waiting for others to find out before they finally admit anything.
Well, I think part of it, Gwendolyn, is you have to you've got to put yourself in the shoes of the government. If you will bear with me, they have a pretty much a binary decision to make. Okay, and it's pretty simple, and it's all based on consequence. Okay, so when they put it on a scale and look at the options to either A, you flip the button and say we're going public about it, and what are the consequences if we and when we do. I know one of the big consequences the government had coming forward with UAPs was mass panic, and loss of trust in the government. I mean, yes. To suggest that there is a technology at a minimum out there that we don't understand kind of makes you feel a little bit primitive, and that's a scary thing. And for the government to say we can't explain something, but we're going to go ahead and tell you that we hear you and this is what we got. Same thing with the Bigfoot. Okay. At least for the time being, I think they're in that same conundrum. And again, it's weighing consequences. Option one is to come out with it, and I'm sure they've ran numerous scenarios as to what the reactions would be. Mm-hmm. There would be, this is the big problem. There's no laws on the book right now that prevents anybody from going out there and killing or harming, capturing one of the species, and it's open season. And to me, that's kind of that's my catalyst for doing what I'm doing. We're behind the 8 ball on this, but so that's one consequence. The other would a number of things that we talked about, the tax money being used for that, and maybe some ramifications about access to certain areas, at least in areas where a specimen is initially brought out from. Mm-hmm. I'm sure an area would probably be quarantined off until scientists can get in there and try to find another of the species. But wholesale across the country, no, I don't think that would happen. But you never know. And again, the religious ramifications and the like we talked about, trophy hunters. So there are a lot of potentially negative consequences for that decision. Your other decision is shut the hell up.
Yeah.
And what are the consequences for that?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So
right.
Can you blame the government really when this is the binary choice they're faced with? Do they know they exist? They can't help but at least be aware of it, and probably have certain individuals assigned to it. Right. But are they ready to come forward to make that step, to flip that switch and risk the consequences that may come with it? Maybe not yet, but I think they're getting closer. I hope so.
Yeah. I could agree with that, and I completely agree with you. We do actually have a great question from Justin. He says, great discussion. I have seen unknown objects in the sky, and as a pilot, I couldn't explain what I saw, so I am open-minded. With Bigfoot, I am also open-minded, but why no discovered skeletons found? Great question.
Well, I get that asked a lot. It's a legitimate question. The best answer that I can give, well, there's a couple. One is that nature is a phenomenal recycler. Okay, case in point, and I use this in some of the talks I've done over the years. In 1991, I believe it was, I was hunting elk. Not far from actually where I had my sighting in '93, And I was by myself like an idiot, but I had tracked down a good sized elk, approaching 600-700 pounds, which is not that big when it comes to Roosevelt elk, but it was a female cow, and I had a permit for a tag for a cow, so I shot this cow. Now, I had been tracking it in snow, which made it kind of easier, but this was in November, and the weather in November in the Oregon Coast Range can change in a minute. And so, once I got this elk down, I began to do a conventional, traditional field dressing. When it started to pour snow in a form of a whiteout, and I was driving a 2-wheel drive vehicle by myself. And I knew that I had to go up in elevation to get out. So rather than do this traditional field dressing, I did a pretty field expedient butcher job, if you will. I wanted to get out of there. So I took the hindquarters, the shoulders, the back strap, and I left 80% of that animal laying there when I took off out of concern for my own safety. So probably a good 500 pounds. Almost all the bone, hide, head, I left pretty good size remains there. And I went back, the snow had cleared, it warmed up a little bit. I went back about 3 weeks to the day and went to that very same spot where I left about 500 pounds of carcass. And had I not known where I had brought that elk down, you wouldn't be able to tell me that there was an animal there at all.
Interesting.
500 pounds, and it could have all been gone in 2 weeks. I don't know. I just happened to get there in 3 weeks. But there's some videos you can actually see, get on YouTube online, where Fish and Game have left cameras, time lapse cameras on deer carcasses and other animals, and in time lapse, it does not take long for an animal to completely vanish, and it's just nature's way. You know, that's a good excuse, but we find deer bones, we find bones of other animals, and well, that's true. However, that's where the other element comes in, and that's numbers. And when we're talking numbers that are probably, I'm just spitballing here, but I'm going to say across North America, it's Canada, the U.S., including Alaska, say 2,500 of these. It sounds like a lot. People go, oh, wait, there's only one, right? that one legendary beast, and everybody figures it's a he, and it shows up for hundreds of years and thousands of miles apart. Now, it's obviously a living species, so a viable species. So anyway, but 2,500 of anything spread over 2 different nations, pretty much an entire continent, is not much of anything. So, we find deer. Well, you know what? I've probably got deer in my yard right now. I've got game cameras out there, and I've got 3 deer that visit my yard daily. Last year I had 7 whitetails, but you can over here you can take 6 deer a year because they're so overpopulated. In Oregon, it's estimated there are 6,000 North American black bear in the state of Oregon, and rarely have they ever found the bones of a North American black bear, Ursus americanus, if you will, that has died of natural causes. And you want to talk about scarcity? I mean, we look at the mountain lion, the cougar that we have over there. There's I think the last estimate was around 4,700 cougar. You're lucky to see a cougar in your entire life. I've been fortunate enough to see 2 in my entire life, and I've spent a lot of time out in the woods. I've heard them, I've seen signs of them. Sound familiar? But to see one is very rare. So That's a couple of reasons. It comes down to odds, and when you're dealing with a very scarce animal, and you deal also with Mother Nature, and there will be no fossils because fossilization is a very difficult process and takes very extreme conditions for fossilization to happen. And we just don't have that over here. You rarely find fossils unless you're going back into the Jurassic epoch. So it's the best I can do. I mean, it sounds like an excuse, but it's logical, especially with my experience with that elk, for instance.
Right.
You know, for 500 pounds to just disappear, you're not just dealing with, especially in the Pacific Northwest, you're not just dealing with scavengers, but you're also dealing with predators, you're dealing with insects, you're dealing with bacteria, you're dealing with weather, and the soil in the Pacific Northwest is very acidic, and it even plays a part in decomposition. So, but now it's nature's way to disappear dead things.
Right.
You know, this might be a good time for me to jump in real quick, but on the other side of the coin, from what we know of Native Americans and their close relationship in the past with these beings, a lot of tribes consider these beings as being brothers because they're so close to us. And then on the other side of the coin, there's that theory that they bury their dead as well. Now, with that being said, what other species is out there, primate-wise, hominid-wise, that does that?
Well, that's a great question, and it's that's my go-to really when people want to say that Bigfoot can do fantastic things, that don't make sense. Is to give me an example of another animal, specifically a mammal. We'll at least get to that level, and hopefully primate that's capable of doing it. You tell me Bigfoot can fly and shoot flames out its ass, then show me another animal that can do that, and we've got a starting point.
There's one,
but so. Getting back to your burial theory, that's a tough one. Burials, when you go back even to earlier versions of man, and we now know as of last December, there's 14 iterations of humans now with the discovery of a Homo rudolfensis in China, December of 24. So we've added another one just on the heels of Homo florensis in Indonesia. So we keep finding humans. They're allegedly long gone, but so, and I do believe these are human. You're right. The Native Americans don't talk about them like they do any other animals, and they were somewhat animist in their own cultures in some ways. In that they assign certain powers to the wolf or the owl or the raven or the coyote or the snake, turtle. They had animal totems, if you will. But when it came to this species, they did not talk about them in terms of a common animal that they routinely would come across so much, but they would refer to them as a tribe. They often would call them either the first ones or the old ones, indicating that this group of this tribe was here before we ever got here. They were already established when we came to this new world. But back to the burial thing, burials or cremation, even to some degree, was based on not hiding a dead person, right? You with me? So it was really about sanitation,
Mhm.
and it was about because diseases, dead bodies, if you don't just leave them in camp, you've got to move them outside of camp and either bury them or burn them, or you can easily get exposed to some diseases. And traditionally, that's probably what started that activity. Later, it became a sign of respect and became more ceremonial. Do Bigfoot, are they of that psyche? You know, I can't say for certain, but one of the things, if you saw my library I'm looking at right now, there's a couple thousand books. I don't just look at Bigfoot books. I've got books over there I'm looking at one, it's just called The Apes. I've got another, here's one here, The Dawn of Humans. I've got books on animal behavior and several books on animal behavior. And it's really interesting to study animal behavior. You'll find that most animals' behavior, and tends to be very individual, is based on that particular individual's life experiences, right? So if, Bob and Doug the deer come up on a highway and Bob decides to run in front of a car, Doug's not going to do that, probably, because he didn't like what happened to Bob. So, so it's and too that there's a tremendous aversion to any animals contacting wild animals, if you will, feral animals, even wanting anything to do with humans. There are some exceptions. Some get habituated. Some become tame. We've literally been able to domesticate not only livestock but dogs and things like that for our own purposes. And I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, but wild animals learn by experience. And it really doesn't, it doesn't vary much between different animals, different species. And so we get to the point of, were there rituals with early man? Well, right. Yeah, we're finding out there was. We can tell by their drawings and by their artwork and by what they did with their early humans, humans of the Homo genus rather, did have some form of ceremonial when it came to their dead. If time allowed, if it was in midst of battle or something, maybe not. But under casual circumstances, who knows? Do we have any primates, and humans, by the way, are primates? We checked that block on our way up to hominid A and hominids, or hominins, I should say. But are there examples of primates? I can tell you, and I'll try to keep it short, but back in the 1700s, there was a rush to try to capture and categorize, classify as many new species, both animals and plants as well, and which is where all this exploration and went forward, trying to find, when we mastered maritime sailing and started reaching new lands and new cultures, there was generally a geologist, a botanist, a biologist, and a historian that accompanied almost every one of those vessels, or somebody with perhaps multiple disciplines. But their job was to document new species, and back then it was no big deal for them to kill one and bring it back.
Right.
to be studied. It was pretty common, in fact. And there was one story. There was a story. I want to say it was. I could be wrong. I want to say it might have been Nigeria. No, I think it was further south. Congo. Well, be that as it may, it was in Africa. Okay, we'll say that there was a British exploration team, one of the first to run into the bonobos, which was a very large, something between a chimpanzee and a larger ape. And they said, "We got to get one. We don't have one of those. We got to get one of those." And they ran into a troop of them and shot one. And they were waiting for the others to leave in order to collect the specimen and load it on eventually onto a ship to bring back to be studied. And they noticed a very unusual behavior compared to other animals that they had shot, that there seemed to be some mourning going on or some concern of leaving the dead one behind. Mm-hmm. And several of them stayed back for more than a day protecting it. And ultimately, they moved on, and these hunters, if you will, collected the body, brought it back to their camp. And not too much long after that, they said that what they presumed to be the alpha male of the group came into their camp. And they pointed rifles at it. They didn't know what it was going to do or what it was capable of. And this thing didn't charge them. It didn't do anything to threaten them. In fact, it gestured in such a way that it was asking for the body.
Oh.
And I just found that incredible when you look at animal behavior. And ultimately, they stepped back and let this large male pick it up and carry it off. And it didn't want any trouble. It just wanted that body. And I thought that was pretty cool story. And it was true that they found some sort of sympathy and mourning for the loss of one of theirs, and they weren't going to leave it.
Interesting.
So again, that still doesn't really call into whether they buried it or not, but they certainly they had concern over what was to become of that fallen
that is interesting
animal. So that story's out there. So I look for examples in nature that try to help me understand whether or not, how they think, how they behave. Could they possibly bury their dead? That one, I don't know. We haven't found a grave. We can't prove it conclusively, but who knows?
Yeah, but I think that says a lot for their concern of, like you said, what was going to happen to their dead.
Did I lose you?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay. We do have a great question.
Bueller? Hello?
Todd.
Anyway.
Uh-oh.
So,
Todd?
Long way of getting to that. I don't know if they bury their dead, and if that's an excuse for not finding them. Yes?
Can you hear us?
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Can you hear the words coming out of my mouth?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can. Yes.
Oh. Well, then we're good.
Great question. So it says great explanation if their population is small, like the cougar.
So what else you want to talk about?
Makes them infrequent to find, which makes sense. Is there?
You want to talk about internet connections?
Is
technical?
I can hear you. Are you muted? You're not. You can't be muted. You can't hear her, huh?
No, I'm not hearing Miss V.
Because she's talking.
Oh no, I am not hearing.
You can't hear me.
Right, just you. I'll be the interpreter. You guys will get my bill after.
We say like it's a bad thing.
Oh!
I'm kidding. I love you. You know
that.
He is the silent type. I do know sign language.
He can't hear me.
Okay. So go ahead.
I
You can be
was
my
well
interpreter.
aware,
Here, I
Todd.
thought I would need her to interpret your Minnesota, and you know, I'm just finally learning Arkansan. So, but
Kansas.
I married my interpreter, so that's good.
Oh,
Anyway,
oh my
Oh,
God.
good for you. That's awesome. So, Gwendolyn, what would you like me to pass on to?
Oh, just the question.
Okay,
Just the
so
question.
the question that she was just trying to relay this question that popped up. It says, great explanation. If the population is small, such as the cougar, makes them infrequent to find, which makes sense. Is there a minimum number in the science of biology to maintain a species? Is there a minimum number? Actually, there is a minimum number. But is there a minimum number that you're aware of in the science of biology to maintain a species? And it's funny that he even brought that up because I was Googling or AIing all of this information too, just during the show here.
and what did you come up with?
Well,
Technical. Ask what the technical definition is, or the definition for technical extinction. You know, the numbers I recall, and it varied obviously on the species and the conditions that they're found in. I mean, and the general health of those species at the time. But when their numbers get reduced to, below or near 300, I don't know that it would be applicable to every species in every circumstance. But it's just interesting to note that you don't have to get down to the last one to realize that oops, it's going to be over. It's probably the last generation.
Right.
It's like 200 you mentioned earlier,
And
correct?
like 200 you mentioned earlier, she says. But from what I found out, I said, how many individuals would be needed to have a minimum thriving population? And it said at one time it was 50 individuals, then it went up to 500, but now they're saying 1,000 to 5,000 breeding individuals is now considered a more realistic minimum for a healthy, self-sustaining population of a large, slow breeding mammal, depending on habitat and connectivity. For a Bigfoot-like species, assuming great ape-like biology, total population will likely need to be 2,000 to 10,000 animals or more because of not every individual is of breeding age and populations are spread across large territories.
Yeah, like I say, it's an environmental and physical question because again, every species has a different gestation period. They come into maturity, sexual maturity at different times.
Yeah.
It just really depends on the species and the circumstances they're in. But my point being that we're playing a risky game to assume that if these things are being seen as regularly as they are, they must be just fine.
Yeah,
I think
I would
that's
agree.
a fool's errand and not very responsible.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that's where I stopped. But I also went on to say, so if Bigfoot were a real breeding species across North America, most wildlife biologists would expect at least several thousand individuals with 1,000 to 5,000 breeding adults as a rough lower bound for long-term persistence. So there it is.
Yeah, I recall my friend, my late friend, Dr. Henner Fehrenbach. Did you know Henner?
I talked with him briefly years ago. I was inquiring about the bell curve of the foot, how that plays in the height relationship.
Yeah, he was amazing. He was a primatologist, was his main discipline, but he specialized in electron microscopy. But he brought his expertise to the Bigfoot community, and I remember having this discussion with him, and he had told me that he presumed, and at the time I thought it was quite exaggerated, but I don't anymore. He had suggested that there was a population based on his study, his knowledge of large primates. He studied obviously apes and gorillas in Africa. That he presumed there was at least 2,000, at least at that time, and that was you're going back probably 25 years. And a lot can change. I mean, that could be 25 years could be a generation to these things. We don't know that. Apes in the wild don't live much more than 30 years or so, and sometimes they'll go a little further in captivity, believe it or not. But so there's a lot of factors out there. The bottom line is we don't have the data we need to make any sort of accurate assessment of the health of the species. And until we do, I think it's best to play on the side of caution when we discuss, whether or not we protect this species.
Right. Absolutely.
So, can you hear me now at all, Todd? No. Okay.
She just asked if you could hear her now.
No, I can't hear you, Gwen.
I can hear you.
Sorry. Can you use your outdoor voice?
Oh my God. So
I don't know what happened. Unmute, whatever. I don't know.
I'm unmuted. You can hear me fine, right, Abe?
I can hear you fine.
Well, as long as we got her up there for eye candy, because she's better looking than you. No,
you're not. If you're looking for an argument, you are not going to find that from me. Yeah.
I have so much to say, but I can't say it. So I just.
Oh my gosh, so much to say you can't say it. You just wanted to point it out.
I appreciate.
So, how are we doing for time?
And scientific, you have that base of research for yourself. Take it away, Abe.
She just appreciates you and your eye for the scientific base for research and stuff like that.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
However, I know that you're getting into the whole woo realm, which define woo, Abe, is to the whole woo community is basically the whole paranormal type research that goes into the Bigfoot field, where you have these floating lights.
This dead air is brutal.
At least all of them. Are you writing it down,
This is not fair. I can't hear.
Hopefully everybody else can hear me. But
he's like making all these gestures. And
the woo community, which I hate that term, is the research of the paranormal type field that involves Bigfoot, where you get these,
Thank you, Helen Keller.
In your bio.
I think I have to make my nickname for her from now on. Helen Keller.
Talking about.
Now what?
In your bio, where
she played a sound
about, effect. Can't even with this.
That was easy.
Another sound effect that said that was easy.
That was me.
So
she's describing your bio. Go back to the original where you talk about the getting zapped and the lights, the floating lights, and all that. Yeah. That describes the woo community. So, how do you involve your scientific research in the topic of woo? Now, my explanation was for the guest, but that question's for him.
Right. So basically, she wants to learn, not learn, but ask you, how are you integrating your scientific research into the woo research? And what are you doing to, as far as zapping, mind speak, or and
that's going to be that's almost a whole other show. But I will say this: I have done extensive research and have for going on 3 years into infrasound. I was one of the first, if not the first, but I know a lot of other people have been running around with sudden revelations on it. But I believe infrasound is a major key in explaining a number of factors, majority of the anomalies that people have been experiencing with regard to the species. You know, if I was dealing with, you know, some anecdotal one or two people saying, yeah, this, I saw them like come out of thin air and then disappear right before my eyes, and wasn't long, whatever, you know, that'd be one thing. But when you hear it, you know, dozens and dozens of times, and sometimes from your friends, there's always some truth in every experience. Now the question becomes: are they misinterpreting? I'm not suggesting they didn't have that experience. Does it necessarily fit into the definition of paranormal? And frankly, paranormal, by definition, is simply an anomaly that is known to have happened that is not explainable by science with today's technology and knowledge. Now, if you go with the supernatural side, which is probably a bridge too far, that gets more into the spiritual and it's a different realm than paranormal. There's a lot of things that we used to call paranormal that penciled out mathematically. You know, that was considered paranormal. This is absolutely normal today, just because half the time because we just stumbled across it. This infrasound has played a role in humankind longer than we even have known about it. In fact, when we learn about the effects of infrasound and how it's affected humans in the past, historically, by applying it in historically in reverse, all of a sudden things that happened in World War I and during the early years of space flight that we couldn't explain. We just knew that the effects of something, but it technically fell into paranormal. Then when we found out about infrasound, just for your listeners' sake, is humans. There's various levels of sound. Humans generally hear between 2,000 and 20,000 hertz. Okay, 2,000 being on the low end, 20,000 being on the high end. Anything higher than that, we can't hear. Other animals can. Obviously, dogs can hear in a much broader range, and other animals can hear in higher and lower ranges. Dogs, for instance, can hear 15 hertz to 35,000 hertz, quite a range. Because we can't hear it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Similarly, darkness, for instance, our ability to see in the dark versus other animals that are nocturnal by nature, they can see light that we can't. If you can't see the hand in front of your face and it's what we call, you know, pitch black, guess what? There's still light. It's just outside of our realm. So, how does infrasound apply? Well, in my research in infrasound, I'll pick one. And I truly believe this is a very viable. I mean, this isn't really quantum theory anymore. So when people say, "Hey, this," I'm going to go with the whole stealth, the whole, you know, Bigfoot steps through portholes that are guarded by little green men, or they can change their frequency and go into another dimension. Yeah, I've got a different take on that. And that is that they found that infrasound, again, we're talking sounds deeper in bass, if you will, than what we can hear, actually has a very physical effect on us, even though we can't hear it. The interesting thing is the lower the frequency gets, the more physical it becomes.
Yeah.
And so picture a pan of water set on top of a subwoofer, and you crank up your stereo. You can see the effect of that on the water. It begins to ripple, and depending on, if you're playing Black Sabbath or whatever, it may even look like it's boiling just from the vibration of the very low bass frequencies. So it's sound is very physical. In the case of people claiming that they see something that didn't seem to have been there before, and like it came out of nowhere, or more to the point, it was there and it didn't walk away, it just faded away, if you will. In a case like that, let's look at how infrasound affects the human eye. One of the things they found out during, we're going back to the late 50s, that early astronauts were pretty much strapped on the top of intercontinental ballistic missiles in a tin can. And, they had one job, They get launched up into space. They had analog dial gauges that would measure G-force, oxygen level, air pressure level, inside and outside, excuse me, speed and what have you, altitude. Their job was to phone home to Houston and read off the gauges. And what they found out and did not understand initially was that as they were taking off from Earth, the astronauts would call back. They're asking for, hey, we need to know all this data. They're saying, I can't read the gauges. They're like, they're right in front of your face. They're like, I can't read them. I can't explain it. Everything's blurry. I can't figure it out. And it wasn't until the capsule actually separated from the booster, or that the engines terminated, that all of a sudden these gauges came back into perfectly clear vision. And they didn't know why initially. And eventually, that's why they invented LCD gauges, or not even liquid crystal, LED gauges. Just remember the old red watches with the little digital numbers? Because it was easier to read than an analog dial with a needle on it, right? So they had to kind of do a workaround on others, to come up with new technology. And what they found now, when they did discover infrasound that everybody was ignoring because it wasn't practical, that those rocket engines were actually generating infrasound. They were vibrating at a frequency that you couldn't hear. Now, certainly parts of it you would they're pretty loud, but there were certain levels, frequencies that were below human hearing that were literally affecting the human eye. And the deal, it wasn't just vibration per se, but in a way it was, because what happens is, just like when you throw a pebble into a mere smooth pond, you see the effects of it, and it ripples like that. What do you think happens when your eyeball gets bombarded with extremely low frequencies? Your body has different frequencies. The human body, actually, different organs operate at different frequencies, they've discovered, and the human eye operates at about 19 hertz. Now, when it gets bombarded, it needs that frequency to see clearly. When that eyeball gets bombarded by vibrations or frequencies, say 15 or 16 hertz, it totally distorts your vision. Your eyeball is filled with liquid, the aqueous humor, and it's like that pebble in the pond. All of a sudden, you're getting shock waves, if you will, rippling through your eye, and it's affecting your vision. Now, where did that infrasound come from? Did Bigfoot do it? Well, again, I go back to are there examples in nature of other animals that can create infrasound? And by golly, yes, there's a whole slew of them too, and most of them, ironically, are large mammals, to include tigers, alligators, elephants, whales, rhinoceros, and somehow the peacock. I don't even know how that got in there, but they have measured. No, seriously, they have measured infrasound coming from dozens of different animals. But again, infrasound is kind of a new field, and it takes some very specialized equipment to detect it, and expensive equipment. And so we have examples of animals that can produce it. We have examples of large mammals that can produce it. And what's interesting is to look into the purpose, because they each have slightly different purposes, which all comes back to communication. But I will digress for now because we're not going to go down that mind speak rabbit hole. But alligators, for instance, use it as a mating call, and they will set off infrasound while they're underwater. And if you're in the area and they're doing that, and they're in a pond, for instance, the pond will look like it's almost boiling. Yeah. And there's alligators under that water, and they're creating that infrasound, and it's to call in females. Yes. In the case of elephants, they use it to communicate their location and where they want to rendezvous at, for instance. And they can actually, what's amazing is they can literally, they send this infrasound through their huge drum-like feet into the ground, and they can other elephants of the herd can pick it up miles away. Yeah, miles away. And the bull elephant, usually the alpha elephant, it uses that to call the herd back together every evening. In the case of tigers, which is really interesting, they use it for purposes of hunting. How do they do that? Well, they can generate what some people call the ultra purr. Imagine listening to a kitten purring. You got to get your ear right up there. Now imagine that like 10 octaves lower. It's sending out these sonic waves, these sonic shock waves. When they come up on a herd of antelope or whatever their prey is that day, they can send out this very deep guttural sonic wave that the antelope can't hear, but they can sense danger close. Something's not right. Something's off, and it puts them into a state of panic, zapped, and they don't know which way to go. It confuses the herd, and it causes enough hesitation to get for the tiger to actually get up on them. They can't. That's the other really interesting thing, is it's very difficult to tell the direction of the source of infrasound. And there again, whales use it for communication. So we got some using it for communication between their species, for finding each other, for calling the herd together, for mating purposes, or in this case, for hunting. So it can be used offensively, defensively, just conventionally for communication of some sort, right? And so we've established that animals can produce this, that we can't hear it, that this infrasound can in fact have physical effects on humans, that humans can create it. Humans can generate it with rocket engines, with certain machinery, and even with explosions. Hello. Um, and it does have an effect. So, and a very large percentage of those that can produce it are large mammals. So I can't say with any definite, that Bigfoot has that or can produce it. Nor can I say they can't, but I can say we've got evidence of large mammals that can do it. And if, in fact, a Bigfoot can produce this, I imagine with the size of lungs they have, they could probably do just that. They can use it for any number of ways, both offensively and defensively. For instance, defensively, hey, you and your buddies are walking and you're going into their territory and you're getting too close. They may put it on volume 1. Again, you can't hear it, but all of a sudden you have this very uneasy sense that something isn't right, or that maybe you feel like you're being watched with no real rational evidence for that. And let's say you decide to keep going further, and so now they take it up to volume 2, and suddenly you have an unexplainable panic attack, right? But again, we're getting off into a different level area. But what I'm saying is, if they can generate this, it goes a long ways to explain a number of different the anomalies that people are experiencing. And my problem is that I'm not suggesting they aren't having that experience. My question is their interpretation of it as to what's causing it. Is it some special supernatural power, or is it just simply something scientific that they have that other animals also are known to have, and that you are suffering the effects of it? So, it's very possible that they can make themselves not so much disappear. My good friend Ron Moorhead would tell you, it's all about frequency and vibration. Yes, that's correct. But it's not what it's doing on their end. It's what it's doing on your end. And that's where Ron and I differ. I believe that they can generate a frequency. You can't hear it, but you certainly can feel the effects of it. And one of those effects is causing your vision to blur, especially when you are looking in the direction of the source of that sound. It makes for a very perfect form of camouflage, and you can imagine they've seen what it can do to other animals. They've probably used it for getting up on some of their prey while hunting. But there again, if somebody says, well, I saw this Bigfoot show up out of thin air, well, maybe it was there all along and you didn't see it, and maybe it got comfortable with the fact that you didn't present any sort of a threat, and it turned it down, or it turned it off.
Interesting.
And then it came into focus.
Can you hear me now?
Which again, we could go on and on about that stuff, but that's just one of the rabbit holes I've gone down to try to explain how they possibly scientifically can seem to appear and disappear at will. It's not magic. It's not a porthole. They're not getting sucked up into outer space. It's not hookamoo. I think you can prove it scientifically possible if they, in fact, as a large mammal, have this capability of infrasound like other large mammals have.
Right. I agree with you. Yes. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear her now?
You can't hear me now.
Because she left and came back in.
You still can't hear me.
I can't.
I do want to say
I'm not getting it, dear.
That
sorry.
You kind of base this research on the woo topic.
Did you pay your phone bill?
Base.
That could not be part of it.
Everybody else can hear me but you.
I'll relay it to you. I'll relay it to you, Todd. Give me a second.
But I do want to mention a.
All right, and then we're going to probably have to wrap up a little bit. I don't know how long you go normally, but
we can wrap up. I do want to.
You know me, I don't shut up unless you say, "Hey." Unless that big hook comes out.
I do want to mention that one of our viewers just brought me this very.
She's holding up something yellow with something black on it.
Very rare copy of Jane Goodall.
Is that a picture?
Research into chimpanzees.
Help me out.
So she's holding up National Geographic magazine with Jane Goodall and the chimpanzees.
So I do want to mention, as far as I'm aware, Jane Goodall was a.
I see what you're holding up.
Of
and I raise you.
Yeah. So what are your? I mean, I feel like that adds credence to the whole idea that Bigfoot is a real possibility.
I wish I would have met Jane Goodall. She was something else. Way ahead of her time.
Give me a second, Todd. She was just trying to tell me something so I can relay it to you, bro.
Jane Goodall was a believer in Bigfoot, the potential for Bigfoot existence. So I think that adds credence with all of her research into chimpanzees that there is a real possibility of Bigfoot in his existence. So if you pass that along for me.
So when it comes to Jane Goodall, and I also talked with Maria Mayer like last year at the conference and everything, where you were a speaker of, so we know of their relationship. But from what Maria was also talking about with her personal relationship with Dr. Goodall, that Dr. Goodall also believed that there is a real, based on the evidence, a good the Bigfoot could exist.
Oh yeah. Oh, she said it publicly more than once.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's of the mindset that we have, it's arrogant for we as humans to think that we have discovered everything that exists on this planet. And you'll find if you look at both extinction and discovery of new species, National Geographic actually did just going back a good 20 years ago, they did a special on species discovery and extinction, and they were saying that every year, and this includes both plants as well as animals, but they said that every year something like 40 to 50 recognized, classified species every year, like 40 or 50 go into extinction. Or by that meaning that they have lost track of being able to find any more examples in the wild, and that over 100 new species, but again, flora and fauna, over 100 new species are discovered every year. Now, we could be talking insects and frogs and butterflies and what have you, but also primates. It wasn't that long ago that they discovered 3 new species of deer in Vietnam and Laos. So, I mean, we're not talking small things. So, it's, again, we have a lot to learn, and sometimes we get caught up in believing that if we were meant to know something, we would have been taught it in school. So if they didn't talk about it in school, so it just something like that would have been taught if it exists. So it doesn't exist. It's easy to get into that mindset. But again, we're talking about the real potential that out of our gullibility or naivety, that we're going to make the mistake of ignoring probably what is going to be one of the most greatest discoveries in the century.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Todd, by any chance, we're just kicking around the idea, but did you by any chance accidentally mute her by touching something on the phone?
How can I mute her?
Yeah,
It's
just,
okay.
If I couldn't do
It's
that,
okay.
I would have muted. I would have muted you a long time ago.
Oh my God!
Hang on, I just
Yay!
touched.
Whoopee!
Hey, what happened?
He
I
just
didn't.
did sound effects.
I found the sound effects. Game over.
Well, it's been great. We'll see you later. Dwayne.
Sorry about all of that. Yeah, I totally agree. The only thing that gets me is people. I think, and I'm totally with you because, especially with the infrasound thing, I've had a few incidences out in the woods myself where I just felt disoriented, weak in the knees, and like a panic attack, anxiety attack, whatever you want to call it. And this happened while two people were around me, and I can't say that it was done by infrasound. I won't say that it was done by infrasound because I didn't have a meter that would say. Okay,
Was there any rational reason for you to have gotten into that state that you could put your finger in?
Well, here's the other thing. Just as on the 19th, me and Pops were out in the area where we shot for finding Bigfoot. And we were just sitting around the bonfire. And then, again, my heart just started going real, real fast. I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck's going on? Totally relaxed, just him and I at bonfire. I was doing some vocalizations. I was doing some knocks and whoops and stuff like that. And then out of nowhere, my body just started to react. And I said, Pops, I'm not, my heart's kind of going fast. He goes, okay, let's get out of there. So, yeah, I mean, we left the area, and that kind of lasted for a little while. I think the body has a certain amount. The body's a mystery in itself. I don't know. I just think that when people hop on or have that effect, they're all like, oh, and then especially when they're all squashing and they got Bigfoot on the brain, they're already like, oh, you got zapped or blasted with infrasound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
this unexplainable panic attack that you talk about could very well be part of that. Again, we think just looking back at the tiger and the Bengal tiger and how it uses infrasound to stun its prey and put them in a state of anxiety and confusion. It's a great trait to have,
it is.
It's very useful, but I've known people to have gone into that mode before in a panic attack. I personally, in 1998, experienced what I've come to know, or that qualified for what people call zapped. I hate these cutesy words they attach to what is simply a scientific reaction that will someday have a real neat name, but zapped. I experienced something like that. In 1998, I put together an expedition near, at the base of Saddle Mountain, which is not far from where I had my sighting, and I was very fortunate to have both Peter Byrne and Ron Moorhead along on my research team. And they had left the area, leaving me alone, and I went up the hill above the base camp to set up some seismic ground sensors. And short story long, I ended up getting roared at from fairly close range, and I literally was paralyzed with fear. It wasn't just some euphemism. It happened. I could not move. I could not blink. I literally was frozen in place, and it took about 2 minutes for me to actually be unfrozen, if you will. And I had at the time just I had come to the conclusion that it was a rush of adrenaline under some very scary circumstances. And again, in this case, like, oh, well, you heard it. How can that be infrasound if you can't hear infrasound? Well, great question. I'm glad you asked. So if you look at a lot of, you've seen sonic visualizations where people have put on computer purported Bigfoot vocalizations, and oftentimes you will see a very unusual artifact on the screen, which is a harmonic. If you follow me, there's a sound that is very, you can hear it very clearly, and so you'll see a sine wave on the computer where you'll see maybe a flat wave until the sound comes, and you'll see this bump in the sine wave, but there will be like a space above that sine wave, and there will be another higher octave, what they call a harmonic. And so they're literally making two different tones harmonize out of one voice. And I often wonder if there isn't, depending on the way their vocal cords are constructed, whether or not they can actually produce a subsonic or infrasound, a lower harmonic, if you will, that just doesn't even register on most of your sonic visualizers, because they don't go down to that level generally. They're usually measuring from 20 to 50 hertz, 20 to 50,000 hertz. But so just because you can hear it doesn't mean that a higher harmonic or possibly a lower harmonic is embedded in that sound that's beyond your hearing. You're just hearing that portion of that vocalization that is within your range of hearing. That makes sense?
Yep, absolutely. Todd, man, bro, on behalf of Gwendolyn, thank you for coming.
No, I can hear her now.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Oh my God.
You didn't know that?
No, I did try a few times, and you didn't even register that I was speaking, so I just decided to stay quiet.
We've been punking you this whole time. We've heard you the entire time.
I've heard you the whole time as well.
I'm shocked that you can hear her now.
Yeah,
I think she's on to us.
No, I told Abe, I said he's like every other man. It can just mute me out like every other man.
Where's that mute button again? Oh.
Oh my gosh.
It was awesome. It was awesome having you on. I'm a huge fan of yours, Todd, and I really like the way you think, how you bring the scientific research into other aspects that might be seen as more woo in the community. And I love that you're taking that approach, because I think that's really important, because there's a lot of things that go on in what would be considered the woo community that really need to be taken a look at in the scientific method that you're using. So I appreciate that you're taking the time to do that.
Thank you.
I hate that terminology, the woo, but
I know. But you know what? Yeah. Here's the thing. There seems to be two very distinct camps, if you will, in the Bigfoot community.
There is.
Scientific, flesh and blood, biological, species, and then the supernatural, paranormal, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's a shame, because in the process, I think a lot is lost between the two groups. That there's this animosity between them. And if there's any way that, my hope is that scientists are able to, when someday I'll try to write a paper on or whatever, that if I can get a hold of some scientists and say, look, here it is, do the math. We know these things exist. We know that this can't explain this. And it could go a long way to explain some of the things that people in that other camp are experiencing, and hopefully they have that aha moment where they go, oh, we never even thought of that. We just kind of wrote them off like I used to do. And so, oh, you know what? That would make sense. That the thing is, you're right. It's not that they didn't experience it; it's just that they misinterpreted the cause of it.
Yeah.
And on the other side, in the other camp, they can go, "See, I told you so," or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but I think it's kind of it'd be great for them to be able to come to have that kumbaya moment and go, "Hey, we were both right."
Yes.
You know?
I like that because my slogan is a closed mind knows only a small piece of the truth. So when you're not looking at the whole picture, you're missing information. So I love the way you did.
I was guilty of that myself, and it took my exposure to taking a chance, really, because I had been conversing, at least on computer and sometimes by phone, with a couple of members of the Omaha tribe, and they had showed me some really bad nighttime video clips that just wasn't enough to sway me one way or the other. And I finally just said, I gotta put my money where my mouth is. I'm just going to go out there, and I don't know if I'm going to patronize them or what, but I've got to at least try. And I ended up eating crow myself because what they showed me and what I experienced not once but 5 nights in a row in 2 different locations, which is a story for another time. But it was literally that point where I went, okay, I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I went back home. I flew back home, and I dusted off my notebook, and I got a little further down the rabbit hole and was able to explain that whole eye shine thing.
Yeah.
And that was where I just kind of went, well, let's see what else is in, dig down in that paranormal file and see what else I can pull out. And it's been kind of a fun exercise. I mean, I can't say definitively that I've come up with the perfect answer for it, but at least I've come up with an answer or
I think it's important that you're at least looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of at risk to myself because, you either got to be in our camp or their camp. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. You know what? Because when I'm done, hopefully y'all be in the same camp, right?
Right. That's, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm kind of in both camps right now at once. And I take the same approach as you as far as looking at things scientifically that could explain the more paranormal seeming type of phenomena that's happening around Bigfoot. So I love your research. I'm a super big fan of yours, Todd, and I'd love to have you on again in an upcoming week, maybe even next week if you're up for it. So
anytime.
Yeah, I love it. And I hope to see you again. I always enjoy when I get to see you. So
next time we mute Abe, that'll be fun.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Hey,
sorry, Abe.
Only fair. Well, you guys had me muted.
Who did that?
Well, me.
I did not do that.
Yeah, I said mute Abe and just went. All right, guys. All right.
It's not me.
No, it's me.
No, I'd be more than happy to come on anytime. I love you both, and I appreciate you as well. So,
thanks, Todd. I appreciate you.
Love you too, brother.
Well, thank you, everyone in the chat who came in to join in and add to it. So, Todd, we'll see you in an upcoming week at some point, and we'll see everybody next week.
All right.
Watch on.
That was easy.
Bye.